Hey, hi everybody. I'm Keith Story, and this is my presentation on the case against the Special Olympics. And before I launch into the actual presentation, I just want to share my background with the Special Olympics. So when I was in high school and college, I was a volunteer and coach for the Special Olympics. And one year went to the Illinois State Special Olympics Games in Chicago as a coach. And then I finished my credential program at Illinois State University and was a teacher for 3 years. And during those 3 years, my students participated in the Special Olympics. And then I went to Southern Illinois University to get my master's degree, and Paul Bates was my advisor. And Paul talked in class a lot about community involvement in the community for people with disabilities and also inclusion in school settings. And then one night in class, Paul mentioned a recent article on the Special Olympics by Orlov, Wayman, and Wood on the pros and cons about the Special Olympics. And I had read the article and thought it was very interesting, and it really opened my eyes about concerns with the Special Olympics. But when Paul mentioned the article in class and just mentioned that, it went over pros and cons, students in the class got very upset that Paul would even discuss an article that had negative views on the Special Olympics. And it was one of those light bulb moments for me that, oh, people are reacting emotionally to this issue, and none of them had read the article. And so it got me thinking about the Special Olympics and my viewpoint. And the more I learned from Paul and others about community involvement and inclusion, the more I became concerned about the Special Olympics and became a critic of it. And then I was a high school teacher for 3 more years, teaching special education, and then went up to University of Oregon to get my PhD in special education. And while there, ran a study on the Special Olympics. And over the years, I've tried to read every professional journal article on the Special Olympics that I can. And I've done some presentations on the Special Olympics and have collected some slides and pictures and information about the Special Olympics that I want to share with you during this presentation. Some of the things that I've collected are old, some are new, and but I think they give a comprehensive overview of why there are concerns about the Special Olympics. So that being said, let's get into the presentation here. So 4 key points for the presentation that I want to go over first with you. First one is, well, what's considered best practices in the recreational area for people with disabilities has changed dramatically since 1968. The basic premise of the Special Olympics has remained the same. Second key point is that no empirical evidence that quality of life outcomes are increased from participating in the Special Olympics. Third key point is more negatives than positives from the Special Olympics. And the fourth key point is that segregated programs like the Special Olympics don't work and can't be reformed. Okay, so the general characteristics of the Special Olympics: it's a popular program, over 3.2 or 5 million participants and 600,000 volunteers in over 200 countries. There's different numbers on the Special Olympics website, but it's obvious that there are a lot of participants, and it's a very popular program for many people with intellectual disabilities. And the mission of the Special Olympics is to provide year-round sports training and athletic competition in a variety of Olympic-type sports for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, giving them continuing opportunities to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, experience joy, and participate in a sharing of gifts, skills, and friendship with their families, other Special Olympics athletes, and the community. So I want to first share with you one of the research studies I did on the Special Olympics with Robin Stern and Richard Parker. It was published in 1990. And what we did was we based the study procedures on a study that Paul Bates and Ernie Pasquifar, Sue-Ann Morrow, and Bob Sedlak had done regarding functional skills for people with intellectual disabilities. What they see is what we get is the name of the article. And so we did 2 slideshow presentations and shared one with one group of students who were in our introduction to sociology class. And then the second slideshow presentation was shown to a different introduction to sociology class. So each class was told that it would be viewing a presentation concerning recreational programs for persons with disabilities. And each student completed the Attitudes Towards Disabled Persons scale, as well as a Likert type scale questionnaire about their familiarity with individuals with intellectual disabilities before viewing the presentation. And there were no statistically significant differences between the 2 groups on the scale or their familiarity with intellectual disability. So class 1 was shown a slideshow and narration of a 20-year-old student engaging in different Special Olympic activities. And then class 2 was shown a slideshow and narration of the same student engaged in similar activities as the Special Olympic slides, but in community recreational settings. So the narration was exactly the same for both presentations. And the Special Olympics slides were taken by following the student around while she was at the Special Olympics. So we provided no prompts or suggestions to her as to what events or activities she should engage in, and none of the pictures were staged. So we just followed her around while she was at the Special Olympics and took slides. And then after the Special Olympics event the next weekend, we took her to matched activities in the community. So like at the Special Olympics, she was bowling. And so the next weekend we went to a bowling alley in the community and bowled for a while. So we just went to activities that were the same for the Special Olympics. So I'll show you the first presentation here, which was the student engaging in community recreational activities. So this is Sue. Sue attends a special education program at her local high school. As part of her program, Sue is involved in activities in which her peers engage, such as hanging out with friends, athletic activities, and games, such as bowling, golf, and running. During these activities, Sue has to engage with others. Also, Sue has to engage in self-help skills that utilize fine and gross motor skills. And finally, like many of us, Sue finds reinforcement for engaging in these activities. So that was the slideshow presentation for the first class. And then the second class saw this presentation. This is Sue. Sue attends a special education program at her local high school. As part of her program, Sue is involved in activities in which her peers engage, such as hanging out with friends, athletic activities, and games, such as bowling, golf, and running. During these activities, Sue has to interact with others. Also, Sue is engaged in self-help skills that utilize fine and gross motor skills. Finally, like many of us, Sue finds reinforcement engaging in these activities. So then these are the results from the study. So we asked 8 questions. So what age do you think Sue is? What's Sue's IQ? What school program should she attend? What retardation label she has? And I want to apologize for using retardation, but that was the term that was used back in the day. What living situation should she be in? What hourly wage do you think she would earn? What vocational program she should be in? And perhaps most importantly, what leisure program should she be in? So the 3 yellow things are highlighted. Those were statistically significant differences between the groups. So you see the scores there. And then the other questions were not statistically significant, but you can see that there's a clear pattern that the group that saw her in the community activities thought she should be more integrated that she was more capable, and so on. Well, the group that saw the Special Olympics slides thought she was more disabled, should be in more segregated programs. So that was that study. So now I just want to walk through the general case against the Special Olympics. So the first issue is that it's a segregated program. So there's no way around it. This idea and focus of the Special Olympics is you can only participate in the Special Olympics if you have a disability. And so this is in contrast with efforts to integrate people with disabilities into normalized recreational settings. And 4 different components of integration have generally been considered. These are physical integration, social integration, relationships, and social networks. So without physical integration, there cannot be social integration, relationships, and social networks. But mere physical presence may not necessarily lead to other forms of integration. Here's an example. An estimated 350 bowlers will be at Husted's Hazel Dell Lanes on Saturday to participate in the Special Olympics Washington Southwest Regional Bowling Tournament. So here you have 350 people with intellectual disabilities descending on a bowling alley. And it's very unlikely that there's going to be social interactions, friendships, social relationships forming as a result of this bowling event. So they are physically integrated at a community bowling alley. Again, it's very unlikely that other forms of integration and friendship will occur. So the Unified Sports Program is often promoted as an example of integrated programs, but with 1.4 million participants worldwide as of 2022. This is only 28% of the 5 million participants in the Special Olympics worldwide. And it's not very impressive results after 30 years of this program. So it appears that the Special Olympics puts few resources into this program in comparison to its other programs. And then there's a lack of skill acquisition, and use of precious teaching time is lost. So the Oakland Tribune, many of the athletes spent 2 days a week for the past 8 months training for the event. And this is often for a once-a-year event. So they're going to use those skills only once a year in an actual athletic competition. And then it's often age inappropriate. So participants are often seen as children. So age-appropriate curriculum and materials involves materials and activities that are consistent with a person's chronological age. And Wilcox and Bellamy long ago noted that since the goals of best practices are in part to minimize the discrepancies between individuals with and without disabilities, that age inappropriate activities and materials stigmatize the individual with disability. And this is often used in the telethons as well. So when we had the Jerry Lewis telethon, he would talk about his kids, and children would be brought out. And then Calhoun found that chronological age-appropriate activities have an effect on how a person with a disability is perceived by others, and the use of age-inappropriate activities decrease the positive perception of people without disabilities. So the adult participants in the Special Olympics are often perceived as children, since both children and adults compete in the same event, which often leads to an infantilization of adults with disabilities. This infantilization leads to participants being denied adult status and dignity. And this has especially been reflected in newspaper reports about the Special Olympics. But before we go into that, just again, Jerry Lewis would talk about his kids, and though often the kids that he was talking about were adults with disabilities. So it is the infantilization of adults with disabilities, that they're seen as children, perceived as children, rather than as being adult members of our society. So here's a picture of the Special Olympics where you have adults and children participating in the same event. And then Faces of Triumph. Again, you see adults and children mixed together. So if you're a regular community member and you see this ad or flyer, then you're going to get the impression that, you know, adults and with intellectual disabilities may be children, because here's children as well. Here's again, adult and a child participating together in the Special Olympics. And then each of the following articles labels adults with disabilities as children, thus reinforcing the stereotype to the general public. This impact may be long-term in how general public views adults with developmental disabilities. Again, the telethons and other charity things such as March of Dimes, Paul Longmore's research has shown that these have lasting effects, and that people continue to view the adults with disabilities as children because of earlier presentations of them being childlike. Okay, so here we go. So it just proves that something can be done for these children, said Dorleen Scalane, one of the volunteers. The event gives kids a chance to compete. Special day for special kids. About 200 people between the ages of 3 and 50 competed in the event. Amy's mother, Carrie, was demonstrably happy for her daughter as she returned to shore at a hard time holding back tears. These kids are so full of love and passion. All they want to do is what everybody else is doing, she said. Okay, and now here's the 2008 Northern California Special Olympics state event. I went to and just went around taking pictures of things. And these pictures are of recreational activities that were provided that were in addition to the athletic competitions that were happening. So a lot of the athletes, when they weren't in a competition, would spend time here. And when I was photoshopping these slides, my wife, who is also involved in the disability field as a teacher in other areas, she was like, "Oh, are you still going on about the Special Olympics?" I said, "Well, take a look at these slides here." And she goes, "Oh my gosh, they're still doing the same things they were 20 years ago." Okay, so this is just some slides that activities that people are participating in. So again, they're very childlike, and so the non-disabled individuals who were there were helping the adults and children participate in these childlike activities. Here's the 2016 Oregon State Special Olympics. So you can see again that you're mixing adults and children, and a lot of the activities are for children. And then there's lack of normalization. So in the Special Olympics, everybody wins. In real life and athletic competitions, that's not always the case. And then there's the dignity of risk that Perskay originally wrote about in 1972, such as overprotection that endangers the person's human dignity and tends to keep them from experiencing the normal taking of risks in life, which is necessary for normal human growth and development. And then there's the issue of the huggers. So the huggers have officially been banned from the Special Olympics, but they keep showing up anyway. And when I was teaching class on inclusion, I would show this presentation. A lot of the students would say, "Oh, I was a hugger volunteer at the Special Olympics." So the huggers have been present. So a paper in the Oregonian, which is a Portland, Oregon newspaper, "Huggers ready for Winter Special Olympics. The huggers are an important part of the Special Olympics program," according to Susan Wessinger of the Oregon Special Olympics office in Portland. The New York Times had a picture of a person getting hugged with the caption, "Second place winner in the 3,000 meter run, Ludmila Konusheva," sorry for my mispronunciation of that, "of the Ukrainian team got a hug from Rosemary Spaflor, who with Rose Koronata had come to Osana, Connecticut to watch the games." So here you have a couple people who just came to watch the games and then ended up being huggers. So they just, I guess, went on to the field and worked as huggers. The Berkeley Voice had an article titled "For Inspiration, Hugs, and the Gold." And in the article, athletes laughed and smiled the same regardless of where they finished. And there were the hugs, whether it was on the track, the pool, or the tennis court. You couldn't go a minute without spotting an embrace. Our university performers were thrilled to be part of it, but perhaps their greatest thrill and satisfaction came from being selected to be the huggers that stood at the end of each race and were there to embrace each special athlete as they crossed the finish line. That is where the true magic and beauty of the Special Olympics took place. So here you have an issue where the athletes in the Special Olympics are getting hugged by complete strangers. And for a lot of athletes, the issue of social skills may be a challenge for them. So here they're learning that it's okay to go up and hug or be hugged by a complete stranger. So they may generalize that skill to a community setting where it may not be appropriate to hug a complete stranger. And here you have Special Olympics Texas looking for volunteers. At the end of spring games, at the end of a 50-yard dash, we have huggers, said Bringman. And then how to get involved in the Special Olympics: supply volunteer power, such as trainers, timers, or huggers. And then in the Special Olympics, the coach is in the dominant role, and the athlete is in a role of being less able, more dependent, unequal. So in sports, the coach is expected to direct players as to what they do. That's the way athletic competitions often work. You have the coach or manager who's in charge, and then the players or athletes do as they're directed. So in the Special Olympics, the coach is a person without a disability, and that means that athletes in the Special Olympics are in a role of being less able, more dependent, unequal. And in this arrangement, it makes it more difficult to establish friendships and social networks among participants with and without disabilities because it's difficult to get around the coach-athlete relationship. And research has found that equality is a key ingredient in forming relationships. So if you're playing sports, you may develop friendships with other athletes, but perhaps not with the coach or manager who's in the dominant role. So again, research has clearly indicated that you have to have that equality in order to form relationships with people. And then the image. So popular press accounts of the Special Olympics often reinforce a negative, self-fulfilling prophecy that evokes sympathy, pity, or stigma. So Emma Brombeck, who was a columnist in the newspapers, wrote, "Suppose behind the vacant, empty eyes, the gold medal on the red, white, and blue ribbon dazzled them and meant something. Is it possible that the mouth that could not control saliva was willed by the brain to smile, but the muscles just couldn't do it?" Here we have another one. "But the real stars of the show were the event participants who, despite their mental handicaps, were able to inspire all who attended, as well as to conjure up smiles from all the warm huggers and event contributors." Oregonian newspaper article, "Chad McFarland, 13 of Medford, triumphs over retardation and his own hesitance in cross-country skiing at the Special Olympics. Part of a worldwide network, the Oregon Games this year drew about 400 athletes who suffer from mental retardation to Mount Bachelor during the weekend to ski, skate, and even dance just for fun at a party in Sun River." Now, personally, I'm against dancing for fun. No, that's a joke. I'm just making fun of what they're saying there. So don't believe me. The LA Times referred to participants as enchanted creatures and angels unaware. Pittsburgh Press had a picture of a person getting hugged with the caption, "Special hug." Syracuse Herald American said that it was difficult deciding where the special ends and the Olympics begins. And then the editorial in the same paper noted that the Special Olympics volunteers learned that the mentally retarded are great kids. And headline in Eugene Register Guard, "Athletes win more than medals." And the photo showed an athlete getting hugged after participating. And headline in Oakland Tribune, Special Olympics, athletes win smiles. And then from People Weekly, if sheer courage weren't enough, the opening ceremonies of the games held July 1st got a boost from a squad or two of celebrities, starting with the Kennedy clan. LA Law's Jill Eikenberry, who attended with her husband and co-star Michael Tucker, surveyed the milling athletes and their beaming parents. The joy is infectious, she says. All you have to do is look at their faces and you feel what's going on in their hearts. The games are indeed special, a kind of pure sporting competition, but the reward for Special Olympians is always there, if not in victory, then in the bravery of the attempt. Rogers, interim director of Ventura County Special Olympics, said she and her co-workers cry every year at their ceremony. It's the spirit and excitement, she says. The kids have just given their all. And then President Barack Obama on the nationally televised Jay Leno show, in which he remarked in regards to his bowling skills, it was like the Special Olympics or something. And then again, the huggers. They've been a problem throughout the Special Olympics history. For example, the Miami Herald ran an article in which the text was, wanted hundreds of excellent huggers in the South Florida area. Miami-Dade Special Olympics is in need of 2,000 volunteers or huggers. Arizona Republic had a letter to the editor in which the writer said of his volunteer experiences at the Special Olympics, I was allowed to present the medals for which I received a bounty of hugs and a few kisses. So again, you've got the athletes hugging and even kissing complete strangers as they compete at the Special Olympics. So can create some potentially difficult situations. New York Times article had a picture of a person being hugged with the caption, second place winner. Oh, this is one I already had before. Sorry, I have a duplicate here, but skip that one. Fresno Bee quoted two Special Olympics directors as saying, we get paid, says Carolyn, all the smiles and hugs we can get. We're big huggers, says her husband. The kids love it. So do we. And then President George W. Bush, the Special Olympics Global Law Enforcement Torch Run ceremony at the White House, stated that, I remember when I was governor of the great state of Texas being a hugger. That was during the Special Olympics Games. If you've never been a hugger, I strongly advise you to be one. That means you stand at the end of the finish line of a race and you hug the people coming across the line. It meant a lot to me to be a hugger. And then after Barack Obama's remark about the Special Olympics on the Tonight Show, U.S. Representative Patrick J. Kennedy, who's a nephew of Eunice Shriver, who started the Special Olympics, said, but the best way to apologize is to go to a Special Olympics event and be a hugger. And then, as I said before, individuals with developmental disabilities often have difficulties engaging in appropriate social behavior. So again, you have them being hugged by complete strangers, and then they may generalize this hugging to other situations at a work site in the community where it's not appropriate probably to hug a complete stranger. And then we have the promotion of handicapism. So handicapism is a theory and set of practices that promote unequal and unjust treatment of people because of apparent or assumed disabilities. And because the Special Olympics is designed to serve only persons with disabilities, it focuses the public attention on the disability. So handicapism is similar to racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination. Thus, the Special Olympics perpetuates the belief that there are two classes of people, normal and disabled, and people with developmental disabilities need a recreation program different from that provided to people without disabilities. And then, as noted by Johnson, events such as Special Olympics foster the us against them attitude, with them being people with disabilities, and that there's been a backlash against disability rights in part due to people with disabilities being in segregated settings and events and not being part of the mainstream society, just becoming the us rather than them. So we want people with disabilities to be perceived as us rather than being different. And then reliance on athletic events. Not everybody likes to participate in athletic activities. and it may be easier to get friendships and social networks in non-athletic situations. Okay, so this is part one of my presentation. I'm going to stop it here, and then I will have part two, and hopefully you'll watch that as well. So thanks for your time, and I hope so far this has been helpful and informative for you.